Today, we're looking at an article from Education Week titled Teachers' Stress Trickles Down to Students. And I want to start by saying this very clearly. This article is moving in the right direction, and that matters. It acknowledges something that we at Reclaim the Room have been saying, that what we carry doesn't stay neatly contained inside us. It shows up in our classrooms, it affects students, it shapes the learning environment. And at the same time, the article still relies heavily on the term burnout. And while burnout is familiar and widely used, it continues to fall short of explaining what's actually happening in teachers' bodies and nervous systems. Hello, and welcome back to Reclaim the Room. I'm Ridley. So today I want to talk about what this article gets right, where it still misses the mark, and most importantly, the three things it highlights that actually help teachers. Then we're going to talk about what has to change for those supports to move beyond surface level solutions. Now, this article connects teacher stress to student outcome, classroom climate, and overall learning conditions. It also describes how districts are trying to respond. Specifically, it highlights three strategies that districts say they're implementing: reducing teacher workload, providing mental health support, and improving leadership support and school climate. And I want to name each one first and then slow them down just a little bit. So, the first one is that one of the strategies highlighted in the article is reducing teacher workload. Fewer competing demands, fewer responsibilities layered into an already full day. And that does help. When teachers aren't constantly juggling instruction, behavior management, documentation, communication, and crisis response all at once, stress goes down. From a nervous system perspective, fewer demands mean fewer threat cues. The body isn't constantly preparing for the next escalation. But here's the disconnect. Workload reduction is often treated as a temporary relief valve instead of a structural necessity. Teachers aren't overwhelmed because they're inefficient. They're overwhelmed because the job has expanded far beyond what one human nervous system can reasonably sustain. Reducing workload isn't a perk. It's harm reduction. The article also points to districts offering mental health support, access to counseling, wellness programs, or therapeutic services. And on paper, this sounds promising. And support can help when it's trauma informed and understands occupational exposure. But there's an uncomfortable truth underneath this strategy that we rarely say out loud. Many districts struggle to hire licensed mental health professionals because they can't offer a competitive salary. Yet somehow a teacher's salary is expected to be sufficient to compensation for educating children, managing behavior crisis, absorbing trauma, and remaining emotionally regulated all day long. If a salary isn't enough to attract a trained therapist, we need to ask why it's considered adequate for educators who are doing emotionally complex, psychologically demanding work every single day. That contradiction is important because when support is framed as an add on instead of protection, when the conditions causing the harm remain unchanged, Teachers are left responsible for recovering inside systems that continue to overload them. And the third strategy highlighted in the article is a supportive leadership. Teachers report lower stress when administrators are present, responsive, and willing to intervene. When situations escalate, leadership matters, not because it boosts morale, but because it determines whether teachers feel safe, backed up, and believed. Safety isn't a feeling, it's a condition. When leadership provides predictable responses, clear boundaries, and shared responsibility for crisis situations, the nervous system responds accordingly. But support can't be symbolic. It can't stop at encouragement or empathy. Real support shows up in policies, follow through, and protection, not just appreciation. And even with these strengths, the article stops short of naming the real issue. Burnout language remains dominant, and burnout suggests exhaustion. What many teachers are experiencing is exposure. Teachers aren't just tired, they are repeatedly exposed to high intensity emotional and behavioral demands that activate the nervous system over and over again. Without naming that exposure, solutions remain partial. We get stress management instead of exposure management, and responsibility quietly shifts back to teachers to cope better. For real change to happen, teachers have to bring these misconceptions into light. That doesn't mean blaming administrators, unions, or families. It means correcting the narrative. When we keep calling nervous system overload burnout, systems respond with surface level fixes. When teachers say this is exposure upon exposure upon exposure, and this is affecting my body, the conversation changes. Language determines what solutions are considered reasonable. Until the language shifts, the burden will continue to fall on people carrying the most. The APA, or the American Psychological Association, if you will, has been very clear about this. Chronic, uh, chronic occupational stress affects sleep, immune function, cognition, and emotional regulation. These aren't motivation problems. They're physiological responses to a prolonged stress without adequate recovery. Teaching has become a profession that demands constant regulation without providing sufficient conditions for repair. And understanding that isn't about lowering standards. It's about aligning expectations with human biology. Articles like this one matter because they do move the conversation forward, even if it's not far enough yet. And if this episode has resonated with you, I hope you will share it with a colleague who might need to know this language, who might need to hear this message. And if you're finding these conversations helpful, please follow and subscribe. Leave a review on YouTube. Now, that's how this work reaches the educators who need it most, and how change starts to feel possible instead of theoretical. And as always, really glad that you're here. And as always, thank you for helping us reclaim the room.